Ladies and gentlemen, Mollusk here, and this is going to be a super quick video on my preliminary first glance skim read first impressions of Fantasy Battles The Ninth Age, a community developed descendant of the much mistreated Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition produced by Games Workshop, before it was mercilessly hacked off from them like a gangrenous limb. If you are at all familiar with this channel, you will know that getting rules right is at best optional, so there's every chance that I've misread something or simply made it up in my head. If you're after cool, accurate and insightful, this ain't the place for you. It's my first impression of the main rules and you have just been warned. So, first things first, game setup. The way you structure and build your army seems pretty much the same. Terrain is very similar in terms of what you pop down, but the guide for how to do it is simpler and there aren't quite so many rules for all the different kinds of heads you might fall in. The types of deployment you can have look like they've reduced in number. I mean, I didn't see that canyon deployment thing, so there might be some crying dwarves, but there was a flank deployment which looked quite interesting, and otherwise how you go about deploying is the same. The writers have also included some secondary objectives, which I think is a fantastic idea, and you basically either agree with your opponent to choose them, or roll a dice with them, or just don't use them at all if you're that way inclined, but I think I'll cover them a little bit more later. Movement phase. At a glance, it's the same, guys. Paragraphs seem more concise, the language seems less ambiguous, and yeah, so it looks good. Magic, so here was where I saw the most obvious changes. You got the different spell types, there's more of them, but they kind of do similar things as how they used to, and it looks like there's going to be a number of spells with multiple keywords. As I said before, in movement, it looks like some thought has gone into trying to make things unambiguous and closing loopholes, so you know, without seeing the spells, yeah, seems good. There's been a more formalised sequencing restructuring in how the magic phase actually works. Go and look at it yourselves, but basically it seems to be generate dice, both sides get the chance to dispel remains in play spells, do some casting and dispelling, rinse and repeat until you run out of magic. Winds of magic are done the same as in 8th. Active player gets 2d6, defensive player gets the highest of the 2d6. Channels are different though, so you only get one per phase, no matter how many wizards you got, but the more wizards you have, the more likely it is you'll get that channel. In your face, Tzeentch Demon Magic Whores. I know someone who's not going to be happy to see that. So it specifies you can only use 12 dice in a single magic phase. I think that's probably the same, but you can't generate more than 2 more power dice in a single magic phase, so goodbye Herdstone, I guess. And there was also something about wizards being able to aid each other, and instead of casting spells themselves, boost the level of the casting wizard up to a maximum of +4, which, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Get some more use out of the level 1s that way. So, miscasts. So the mechanic of having the simultaneous overwhelming power and miscast on a double 6 is the same. However, the irresistible overwhelming force doesn't make the spell go off automatically anymore. It adds d3 plus the number of dice you use to cast the spell to your casting total, which probably is quite a significant amount, but it does mean that it can be dispelled, and you don't roll on the miscast table if this happens. And just to be clear, the dispel roll can benefit from this modifier as well, if it rolls double 6s. However, it won't miscast. If you do cast a spell successfully with your double 6s, you then roll 2d6 on a miscast table, which is pretty much the same as it was before, except holy crap, the severity of the results tend to be amplified by the number of dice used to cast the spell, and you're capped at a maximum of 5 dice on any single spell you try to cast. So, in conclusion, magic looks more structured, and the risk of going big or going home seems more proportional. Though not having seen the spells and what they need to cast, I can't really comment on how easy it is to get the really important ones off. Shooting, yeah, I'm a Beastman player. It pretty much looks the same to me. Combat also looks pretty similar, although there was a specific and clear rule about no longer being engaged when it comes time to be in combat. Basically, if you charge something and were going to be in combat, but then the thing that you were in combat with, for whatever reason, wasn't there, when you get to the smashy phase, you can pretty much act as though you won a combat, and pivot or overrun as necessary. Maybe that was something you could do before, but it actually came up in my last game, Another Day in the Chaos Wastes, and it took us ages to find somewhere on the internet to work out how to resolve it, so that's great. So troops and weapons, and by this point, I'm skimming fast. The thing's 117 pages and a good chunk of that is in index, and that brevity is an improvement in itself, but even my mighty attention span starts to wane after about page 30. So troop types, yeah, they pretty much look the same. Same kind of stuff about fighting in ranks and monsters being slightly different fighting in ranks. There's kind of combined profiles, where essentially you've got two different profiles for the two different things on the model, and it basically seems to boil down to you attack using the separate profiles of the mount and the rider or what have you, but when you get attacked you get to use the best of whatever you've got. Movement is always the mount and leadership is always the rider. Weapons look pretty much exactly the same. Again, shooting isn't particularly my thing, but the misfire table looks a little bit more punishing, as I think it's like a 50% chance you just lose the war machine, which I'm in favour of. There's a new armour type that gives a better save, so I think we're going to see some more durable infantry, which I guess we'll just see how that works, although from watching Once Bitten's battle report, it still looks like units tear through each other without too much trouble. Characters, yeah, major skimming at this point. Yeah, they look the same. Challenges and movement, all that kind of stuff. Joining units. One thing I did notice is that champions give you a minimum of a 4-inch charge, although if you still fail, then you still fail and go the distance on the dice. But that little rule looked pretty cool. The victory conditions for the games are pretty similar, although the addition of the secondary objectives also looks like it makes things a little bit more fun. And I've been getting into Malifaux recently where the objectives just are the game, and that's a dynamic that I really like. Basically there's 3 of them. There's Hold Ground, where you have to hold the centre of the table to score 10% extra points based on the game's point size. There's Breakthrough, where you have to get into your opponent's deployment zone, again 10% of game point size. And Secure Target, where there are 2 markers pretty much near the middle of the table that you've got to control by having the most people near them at the end of the game, and again 10% of the points total for the battle. Pretty simple, but I reckon that'll make for some really quite interesting games. And one thing I always had a problem with was the way to work out who'd actually won the damn battle and how much by, because the 8th edition way of doing it was just pure crap. So I'm really happy to see that they've made a very straightforward and clear margin of victory table. It's pretty much the same way that I was doing it, where you take the difference as a percentage of the points total of the game, except that it's much easier to achieve a victory than I was doing it, which is great because no one likes draws. And finally, the special rules. There's about 70 of them. Some of them look new. Almost all of them, though, are based on what we had before. Personally, I could have handled a few less to remember, but the variety and the theme of all the rules that we had in 8th edition really did add to its flavour, so, I guess special rules are always cool. And the common magic items are pretty much the same, with a few little interesting tweaks. One that caught my eye was I forget what it was, but it's something that allows your wizard to not be forced to choose his magic lore before he's seen the table, and presumably the opponent's lists, which sounds pretty interesting. Not sure if I'll take it, but it sounds interesting. So there you go, guys and girls, those were my thoughts. At a glance, it looks like 8th edition, but more streamlined, and that's certainly what I wanted to see. So my excitement for this game hasn't been curbed, and I'm really looking forward to trying it out. There you go, thanks for watching and take care.